What's going on, everybody? This is part 3 of how to mod my PS1. This part is going to be all about LED lights, getting them ready and everything. The first segment is going to be about switching the power light, which is the little green light next to the power button. That way you can match it to whatever LED colors you put inside. Then the next part is going to be actually making the LEDs and getting them set up for what we did earlier, which is this guy, the little window for the top lid. So that'll be a little bit later in this video. First, we're going to start out with this, though. First thing you're going to need is I've got an LED here. Pretty much any 5mm LED is going to be okay voltage-wise to replace this one. So don't stress it if the voltage or anything, pretty much no matter what, it'll be okay. UV lights may be a little different because they're pretty high voltage, so that may not be the case, but any other type of light or any other type of color is probably going to be just fine no matter what the voltage is. Now what we've got here is this is the little power board, and as you can see, that's where the power cable plugs into the back of the PS1 console. Right here is where you would push the power, and if you see, now that light is on, now it's off, on, off. And that little light is what we're going to be replacing. This is a blue LED. Now what you've got to do here is you've got to have a multimeter. Let me show you what this is. This checks voltages. Okay, and we're going to be checking the DC volt. And so that's what I've got it pointed to. I've got it up to 200 volts, even though it's going to be nowhere near that. It's not even going to be close to 20, but I usually just leave it on 200. And then you'll have the two prongs. Now the point of this part is we're trying to make sure we get the polarity right. You want the plus, you want the positive going where the positive and the negative for the negative. So you don't want to get it backwards, or you'll have to redo everything. Now for these little 5mm LEDs, there's two prongs, and as you can see there, one side is longer and one side is shorter. The longer side is always positive, and the shorter side is always the negative or ground, whatever you want to call it. Now, please be careful with this. You can shock the crap out of yourself and get yourself really hurt. So, anytime you handle this while it's plugged in, even if it's not on, it doesn't matter. If it's on, that's fine. If it's off, that's fine. It's going to give you the same effect. It's going to shock you just as bad. So do not touch any components, only touch the pieces of board where there is nothing anywhere near it. And remember, it's just as easy to get shocked by touching the bottom because there are tons of solder joints underneath this. And if I touch any one of those, then I could get shocked. And if you happen to get one that's 125 volts, you're really not going to be in good shape. So just keep that in mind here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this thing on, and then we're going to put the negative and positive. Let's see if I can make sure I can get both of these in here. As you can see, that's on. It fluctuates a little bit. That's normal. Don't worry about that, especially if yours does it too. What we're going to do is we're going to pop this on and kind of flip it over, and we're going to attach these to the two connections on the underside where this LED is soldered on. That way we can make sure that we know which side is positive and which side is negative. So, I popped it on now. I'm going to carefully flip it over. And it's even okay to just grab it by the cord because you're definitely not going to shock yourself there. Now let's see. Yeah, that'll be better. I flipped it around because this cord is a little iffy. Now, what you got to do is you got to make sure and find the ones that are the LED. So you just want to kind of look and be like, well, there's the LED, and so there's the two solder joints for the LED right directly underneath it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it's still on. It is. I'm going to attach each one. Okay, now you see how it says negative? Hopefully you can see that. It says, when I touch it, like I did, if I can get on the right side, it says negative 2.2. That means I've got it backwards. So that means that the positive is the one towards the back. Yep, the positive is the connection towards the back, and the negative or neutral or ground is the one directly in front, right there towards the front. So we're going to keep that in mind as we desolder this and everything. Now, what we're going to do instead of worrying about messing with it and flipping over, we're just going to unplug this right out of the plug out of the wall. And then we're going to go ahead and unplug the cable because it's going to be a lot easier to work with. And we're going to set the cord out of the way. Alright. Now, I've already got my soldering iron preheated. It's already high up there, and you are going to need a decent wattage. You cannot use a really crappy little basic soldering iron because this is factory solder, and factory solder is always a lot harder to deal with. But the whole thing we're doing here is we're going to be desoldering this, and see if I can get it close enough. We're going to be desoldering both joints, but on either side there's these little black plastic things, and that matters too because that's where this little piece of plastic is attached. So we're actually going to be taking that off first. And we can do that the same way. We're just going to kind of melt it a little bit. And while I'm melting this, I'm pulling it from the back side. So I'm melting it and I'm pulling all in one, and there it goes. So now that little plastic piece has come off and get it out of our way. You don't have to hold on to that really. You can. It's not a bad idea because it will help keep this LED light straight and make sure it hits the plastic piece that'll shoot the light up into the console, out of the console, I mean. But you really don't have to. The main thing is just make sure you've got it straight when you reinstall it. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to douse my solder tip here with solder. Just get a good amount on there, just a whole bunch. The more the merrier. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start lathering those two solder joints with solder. And it's already popped out. And there's that. Alright, now I'm going to clean my solder tip off. Get that put up. Now, what did we say earlier about the polarity? The negative was towards the front. This is the front because the plug where the cable plugs in is right here. So this is the back and this is the front. When we did our polarity check, we realized that the ground or negative was the one in the front, and the positive was the one towards the back. So we want to make sure that the longer end is going to go in like this, just like this. The long end is going to be towards the back. Now you're going to have to bend this out a little bit, just like that, and you may have to just get it kind of lined up at first. Alright. That way you can kind of have it right. Now this is going to a little bit tricky because you got to kind of do several things at once. You got to at the same time that you're trying to solder it, you got to make sure this stays lined up so that you're pushing it through those little holes. If you want to, if it's easier, start with the positive since it's longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my soldering iron again. I'm going to start melting that one solder joint. Alright, now it's in there a little bit. It's poked through just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and get my negative placed in here, in that same little hole. Now I can do both of them. You'll kind of have to hit one a little bit, get it melted some, and push it, and do it vice versa, and just keep going back and forth until you've got it worked in there pretty well. Now see, I've done worked it out of there, so I get it back in the hole. And you're just going to keep working with it and keep melting the solder and getting it worked into place. Just like that. Now I've got it's fully all the way through. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it as far as I can until I just can't anymore, because of the fact that it's spread too far and it just won't bend that much. Now you see this is a little bit crooked right now. You see how it's a little bit crooked? I'm going to want to pull this side more this next time I melt the solder. That way it'll be a little bit straighter. Getting my words all chewed up here. So I'm melting that front one to kind of even that out a little bit. Alright, now you see how that's a little bit more even? Now we still need to push it more, so just keep melting that solder. You're going back and forth between both joints and just slowly getting it worked in there little bit by little bit. Keep on going. I think I got a little bit more I can push. Alright, I think that's going to be about as good as we can get it. It's not too far off at all. Alright, now what you do now is we're going to take it and we're going to clip that. You can use scissors or just anything that'll cut it, really. It doesn't really matter. I've got some little things that are perfect for this. So I'm just going to snip it. You can snip it pretty close. Don't leave it too long. Because if it's too long, it could touch something metal on the bottom and short stuff out. Alright, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to actually get some solder, and I'm going to solder that for real, because you don't want to just leave it like that. That's not going to be a good solder joint. So I'm going to melt just a little bit of solder on there. And I'm going to do one side and I'm going to do the other. That way I know that it's on there perfectly strong as it can be. You want to kind of go around a little bit, make sure it's all the way around the whole pole there. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and put this little black thing on just because, like I said, you really don't have to, but why not? I'm kind of just working that back on there a little bit as best I can. And you can go back and melt it a little bit if you want on the underside of this black stuff. Just like that. Alright. Now I'm going to plug it in. If you can, make sure to plug this in first before you plug it into the wall. Alright, now I'm going to plug it back into the wall here. Voila! It works. Let's see if I can. Now you can see it's blue, and that's that. Alright, so that's the first section. The next section is going to be even more, a little bit more to it. And that's going to be the next little segment of part 3. So I'll get back with you here in. Hey everybody, just wanted to add to the end of this, the third part. This is going to be the end of the third part, and I'm going to switch now and go ahead and go to part 4. If I put this with the rest of the LED stuff together, it's going to be like probably a 30 to 40 minute video. So I'm trying to split it up so it's not that tedious. So this will be the end of part 3. And then part 4, we're going to go into the rest of the LED stuff, doing the LEDs for the windows and all that. And so go ahead and look in the description to get the link to part number 4, and I'll see you there.